husband's diamond ring pregnant wife gets furious and files for divorce. Caroline Winston never thought she would become that woman, pregnant, heartbroken, and on the brink of divorce. Yet here she was, staring at scandalous photos on social media, her husband's mistress, Megan Hughes, proudly flaunting a diamond ring worth more than most people's homes. As Caroline's unborn child stirred in her belly, fury replaced the numb shock. Her husband, Richard Winston, a millionaire businessman, had dared to shower Megan with lavish gifts while neglecting his pregnant wife. Enough was enough. Determined to protect her future and her child's, Caroline set her sights on one goal: to walk away from Richard's deceit and reclaim her life. Caroline Winston used to love the morning sipping her tea, enjoying the sunlight streaming through the windows of her stately colonial home in Westchester County. She'd once believed she and Richard shared a life built on loyalty and common dreams, a family, thriving careers, the promise of a stable future. But recently, the sense of security she cherished had started to unravel. It began with late-night business dinners Richard claimed were critical, followed by a suspicious perfume lingering on his suit's fragrances Caroline didn't recognize. Then came unexplained charges on their credit card bills at upscale boutiques she'd never heard of. Though pregnant and often battling morning sickness, Caroline's instincts sharpened with worry. She was no fool. At 33, she'd been around the corporate block enough to recognize the red flags. Her mother, Regina Larkson, once told her, "If a man changes his routines without reason, be watchful." Caroline had tried to brush aside the warnings, telling herself that Richard was simply working extra hard to prepare for the baby's arrival. But the anxiety refused to fade. It crept into her mind at midnight, forcing her awake. One drizzly Wednesday, Caroline pushed aside her half-eaten breakfast. The baby kicked gently. She placed a hand on her belly and breathed through a wave of nausea. The ring on her finger, a modest diamond Richard had bought after his first big pay bump, suddenly felt heavy. She remembered how he'd promised a grand upgrade someday when they reached a certain level of financial success. She'd laughed, saying she didn't need extravagance. "All I want," she'd declared, "is a happy marriage and a loving family." Now that promise felt hollow. Later that morning, Caroline attended her monthly prenatal checkup with Dr. Marianne Rothman at the New Hope Women's Clinic. Everything seemed normal for a second trimester pregnancy. Still, Dr. Rothman commented on Caroline's elevated stress levels. "Try to relax," the doctor advised gently, pressing the ultrasound probe against Caroline's stomach. "Stress hormones can affect the baby's development." Caroline nodded, tears pricking her eyes. She realized she needed clarity one way or another. Once home, Caroline sank onto the living room sofa. Their cat, a smoky grey Persian named Jasper, hopped onto her lap. Stroking Jasper's fur, she mulled over the strange tension that had gripped her household for weeks. Richard came home late most nights, reeking of an unfamiliar scent, half-heartedly murmuring excuses. She suspected an affair, but had no concrete proof, only illusions of guilt that gnawed at her. But beneath the worry simmered anger. If Richard truly betrayed her, how dare he do it while she was expecting their child? It was a violation, not just of marital vows, but of everything Caroline believed family should be. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Their housekeeper, Ava Santos, poked her head in. "Sorry to bother you, Mrs. Winston. A delivery arrived. Looks like flowers." Caroline's heart leapt with a glimmer of hope. Maybe Richard sent them as an apology or a romantic gesture. She hurried to the foyer, only to discover an elaborate bouquet of red roses. The card read, "You take my breath away always, monsieur." The initial clearly wasn't R for Richard. This was from someone else to someone else. Had there been a mix-up with deliveries? Confused, Caroline rechecked the address label. Mr. Richard Winston, Redwood Lane. It was correct. The card, however, was not addressed to Caroline. It was addressed to a Megan Hughes. She felt her stomach twist. Red roses from her own husband to another woman, or from some unknown admirer to the mistress. The details were muddled, but the message was clear. Megan was in the picture. Caroline stood in the foyer numb. Just then her phone buzzed. It was a text from Richard, working late. Don't wait up. That was it. No explanation, no apology for the day's confusion. Fury and heartbreak collided in Caroline's chest. She clenched her fists around the bouquet. Something had to give. She would no longer bury her head in the sand, pretending her marriage was fine. Truth beckoned, however ugly it might be. That evening, Caroline paced the living room, replaying every odd scenario in her head. Over the past month, the anomalies had been stacking up. A new iPhone she discovered on Richard's nightstand that he claimed was a work phone, which he whisked away whenever she entered the room. Lingerie receipts she found in his car, lingerie that certainly wasn't her size. A hotel key card that suspiciously fell out of his pocket one morning. She had confronted him then, but he insisted it belonged to a colleague who needed help with a big conference event. She wanted to believe him, truly. She hadn't married Richard Winston with the intent of becoming a cynic. Years ago, they met at a charity function for the St. Jude Foundation, and he'd been so kind, so supportive. She could still recall him standing on stage, passionately speaking about raising funds for children with cancer, and how that instantly melted her heart. He exuded sincerity and ambition. Caroline, an events coordinator at the time, had fallen head over heels. Their relationship blossomed quickly. They got married amid family and friends cheering them on. She imagined a future brimming with success and children running around their suburban lawn. For a while, that dream felt real, but life had taken a turn. Richard's businesses flourished, and the money came pouring in. He was suddenly a high-powered investor in Manhattan's real estate circles, dining with moguls and traveling for deals. Initially, Caroline was thrilled his success meant more security for their growing family. Yet she saw how wealth changed Richard's priorities. He became restless, always aiming to escalate his status. He started hosting lavish parties, surrounding himself with socialites, eager to impress them with his luxurious lifestyle. One day, Caroline recalled, they had a fight about a yacht party. She was newly pregnant and felt seasick just thinking about it. "You promised to be there," he complained, ignoring her pleas that she couldn't handle waves and loud music. When she stood her ground, he stormed off and left her to fend for herself, making her question if his concern for her and the baby was genuine or simply for show. Now, with the rose bouquet fiasco, Caroline's doubts crystallized. She grew convinced Richard was having an affair. The question was how long it had been going on and whether he'd come clean if pressed. Summoning her courage, she dialed the private investigator recommended by her friend, Linda Freeman. Linda had once discovered her own husband's affair through a PI named Daniel Jenkins, who provided photographic and financial proof. Caroline had never envisioned hiring someone to spy on her spouse, but she felt she had no other choice. "Hello, this is Jenkins," answered a composed male voice. Caroline hesitated, her heart pounding. "Hi, my name is Caroline Winston. I was referred by Linda Freeman. I suspect my husband might be unfaithful, and I need confirmation." They set up a meeting at Jenkins's discreet office on Lexington Avenue. After the call, Caroline sank into the couch, a wave of apprehension washing over her. She felt guilty. Investigating her own husband was a betrayal of trust. But then again, if he was betraying her while she carried his child, did he truly deserve her devotion? Caroline's appointment with Daniel Jenkins came the next day. She traveled into Manhattan, a city that both invigorated and intimidated her with its skyscrapers and bustling energy. She had to pause mid-commute when her baby decided to deliver a few sharp kicks, gentle reminders that she couldn't remain in denial. This wasn't just her fight. She was fighting for her child's future too. Jenkins's office was on the 10th floor of a modest building. Inside, she found a neatly arranged space. A man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair greeted her politely. "Mistress Winston, come in." He offered her a seat in a small conference room. After exchanging niceties, Caroline explained everything: the suspicious phone, the unaccounted-for charges, and especially the roses addressed to Megan Hughes. Jenkins scribbled notes in a leather-bound notebook, occasionally adjusting his reading glasses. "I'll need your husband's schedule, details on his vehicles, known associates, and any social media handles," Jenkins said matter-of-factly. Caroline slid over a file containing Richard's general routine, recent bank statements, and phone records. "Whatever it takes," she said, trembling slightly. "I just need to know the truth." Jenkins nodded. "We'll begin surveillance immediately. If I find evidence of an affair, I can compile it into a report. Should you decide to proceed legally, this evidence may help." Caroline clenched her fists. "I'm not sure if I'll go that far, but I can't stay in the dark anymore." That night, she returned home to find Richard in a strangely chipper mood, his suit jacket tossed over a chair, tie loosened. He greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" His warmth felt forced, like an actor performing a role. Her pregnancy glow might have masked her turmoil, but she was boiling inside, especially when she noticed a fresh whiff of perfume clinging to his shirt. Caroline mustered a smile, though her pulse raced. "Tiring," she replied. "I'm not feeling too well." She prayed he wouldn't see through her facade. She doubted he suspected she'd hired a detective. He seemed too self-absorbed to imagine she'd fight back. Over dinner takeout from their favorite Thai place, Richard spoke animatedly about an upcoming business trip to Miami. He emphasized how crucial it was for sealing the biggest deal of his life. Caroline played along, but her mind churned with suspicion. Was Megan going with him? Were they planning a secret getaway? Her stomach twisted in knots. She could barely touch her food. 2 days later, Jenkins called. "Mistress Winston, I have something for you. I'll email you a file tonight." Caroline's throat tightened. She waited with dread until she saw the email notification ping on her phone. Opening it, she found a series of photos. The first showed Richard at a fancy restaurant La Boheme downtown, smiling across the table at an attractive blonde woman. Caroline scrolled through more images, him placing a hand on the woman's lower back, them entering a hotel together, arms linked. The timestamp read exactly the date and hour he told Caroline he was in a business meeting. Her stomach lurched. She recognized the woman, not personally, but from online gossip circles that occasionally featured real estate bigwigs and their glamorous companions. Megan Hughes, a socialite rumored to have multiple wealthy boyfriends. Caroline gazed at the final photo. Megan's ring finger sported a large diamond, and Richard was gently kissing her hand in front of the hotel's entrance. Caroline's heart pounded with betrayal and fury. She might have suspected it, but seeing proof confirmed the nightmare. She sat there, tears slipping down her cheeks, whispering, "So it's true." Her mind fogged over, but her baby's gentle kick snapped her back to reality. She wasn't alone in this. She had to protect her child from the lies. She spent the next hour sobbing into a pillow, her world collapsing. Then a steely resolve took hold. She wouldn't let Richard's infidelity define her future. If Megan Hughes wanted to brag about her stolen diamond ring, she could, but Caroline wouldn't stand for it anymore. She would not be humiliated or cast aside. She deserved better, and so did her unborn child. A week slipped by in a blur of tears and consultations with Jenkins about how best to proceed if Caroline decided to divorce Richard. At times she felt dizzy from it all, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the swirling thoughts of what if I'd been more attentive, Or could I have prevented this somehow? She vacillated between heartbreak and anger. Beneath it all lay a simmering determination not to let Richard or Meghan trample her dignity. On a chilly Saturday morning, Caroline was browsing her phone when a message popped up from Linda Freeman. Caroline, you won't believe Meghan's post on Instagram. I'm DMing you the link. Heart racing, Caroline opened it. There, in a curated flurry of glitz, Meghan Hughes showcased a massive diamond ring on her left hand, captioned, "When your man knows how to spoil you, #diamonds area girl's best friend, #blessed." Caroline felt the blood drain from her face. The background was the lobby of the Regal, a 5-star hotel in the heart of Manhattan. She recognized the marble columns from Jenkins's photos. The ring was enormous, far larger than the ring on Caroline's own finger. Immediately, Caroline's phone started lighting up with messages from acquaintances and even distant relatives. "Isn't that Richard's rumored mistress? So sorry you have to see this. Are you okay? You need to leave him," and so on. Her hand trembled as she scrolled through comments on Meghan's post, many from strangers congratulating her, others gossiping about which wealthy man had footed the bill. Some comments even speculated about Richard Winston, referencing rumored sightings. Meghan never directly named him, but the subtext was clear to anyone in the know. The smugness radiated from every photo. Fury burned in Caroline's chest. Her cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. How dare Meghan flaunt this ill-gotten prize, especially when Caroline was pregnant with the man's child? The affair was vile enough, but to boast publicly about the diamond ring? It was a brazen attempt to dethrone Caroline as Richard's wife. She fought back tears, refusing to let Meghan see her crumble. Later that night, she confronted Richard in their living room. He'd just returned from work, suspiciously smelling of champagne. Caroline stood, arms folded, phone in hand. "Care to explain this?" She thrust the screen toward him, showing Meghan's Instagram post. Richard froze. His face paled. "Caroline, it's not she's exaggerating. I didn't buy her that ring," he stammered, though the guilt was obvious. "You expect me to believe that? Are you seriously going to stand there and lie?" She glared at him, adrenaline surging. "I have proof you've been seeing her. Stop denying it." He swallowed hard. "One, I made a mistake," he began, stumbling over his words. "It just happened once, twice. It wasn't supposed to go this far." Caroline's voice trembled with rage. "You have a pregnant wife at home and you're giving diamonds to another woman? How far did you plan to take it, Richard?" He ran a hand through his hair, desperation in his eyes. "Caroline, the first messed up. But it doesn't have to end us. She's nobody, just a fling. I love you." His voice cracked. A bitter laugh escaped Caroline's lips. "Then why is she acting like she's engaged to you? Why are you so absent from our life? Why are you never here for doctor's appointments or to talk about the baby's future?" Richard tried to approach her, hands outstretched, but she stepped back. "Don't touch me," she hissed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I can't believe you. I can't look at you. I'm done playing the good wife while you flaunt your cheating." He reached for her again, but she sidestepped him, voice trembling. "If you won't leave, then I will. But mark my words, you're going to regret what you've done, because you're not only losing me, you're losing this family we planned." She stormed into the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it, chest heaving. Outside, she heard Richard's muffled pleas, but she covered her ears, refusing to let him manipulate her again. Inside her womb, the baby stirred, perhaps sensing Caroline's turmoil. She gently placed a hand over her belly, vowing she'd protect her child from this toxic environment. In the darkness, her tears ran hot. She was terrified and furious, but resolved. The mistress could keep her diamond ring. Caroline would keep her pride and build a new future without Richard Winston, no matter how painful that journey might be. Days passed in a haze of avoidance. Richard vacated the house early in the mornings and returned after midnight, presumably staying with Meghan or hiding in some luxury hotel. Caroline no longer cared enough to ask. Each day her resolve to leave solidified, fueled by fresh humiliations. Strangers sent her pitying messages online, whispering about how everyone knew Richard was carrying on with Meghan. She discovered that the ring's rumored price tag was upwards of $150,000, a shocking sum he'd never even considered spending on his own wife. During one sleepless night, Caroline rummaged through financial records. To her horror, she realized that Richard had drained a sizable portion of their joint savings to buy the ring money that was supposed to help with hospital bills, the baby's nursery, and future college funds. This new betrayal felt like a dagger through her heart. She couldn't sit by while he squandered their child's security on a mistress's jewelry. Early one morning, Caroline made an appointment with a prominent divorce attorney named Natalie Pierce. Natalie came highly recommended by Linda Freeman, who had navigated a similarly messy situation. Walking into the sleek law firm on Fifth Avenue, Caroline's heart pounded. She couldn't believe it had come to this, but each step closer felt like reclaiming her agency. Natalie Pierce was a sharp, polished woman in her mid-30s. She wore a crisp navy suit and offered Caroline a compassionate smile. "I've reviewed the details you sent," Natalie began, gesturing for Caroline to sit. "You have ample grounds for a divorce, especially given the financial improprieties and infidelity. The main question is how to proceed to protect your best interests." Caroline took a shaky breath. "I want out, but I also want to ensure my baby and I are cared for. What can we do?" Natalie leaned forward. "We can file on grounds of adultery and dissipation of marital assets. Given his net worth, you should seek substantial alimony and child support. We'll also freeze certain assets to prevent him from moving funds offshore or hiding them." It felt surreal, discussing a divorce strategy like a business deal. Yet, Caroline knew it was necessary. "He'll fight back," she warned. "He's proud and manipulative." Natalie nodded. "That's typical. But we have strong evidence, your private investigator's photos, the bank transfers for that diamond ring. Judges don't look kindly on extravagantly funding a mistress while neglecting a pregnant spouse. I can't promise a smooth road, but your case is solid." Caroline's voice trembled with gratitude and fear. "Thank you. Let's do this." Before she left, Natalie handed her a stack of documents to sign. The formality of each signature made Caroline's stomach twist in knots. She was genuinely terrified of the emotional fallout that would come once Richard realized how serious she was about divorcing. But her child's future and her own well-being demanded immediate action. That night, she found the courage to tell him. He arrived home unexpectedly at 9, stumbling slightly likely from an expensive dinner or post-work drinks. The tension was thick as Caroline confronted him in the foyer, arms crossed. "I spoke to a lawyer," she said, voice trembling but determined. "I'm filing for divorce." Richard's face paled. "Caroline, wait, don't do anything rash." She lifted a brow. "You think this is rash? You've flaunted your affair in public, wasted our joint savings on an obscene ring, and left me to deal with this pregnancy alone. I'm done, Richard." His eyes flashed with anger, then softened as though he might attempt the contrite husband act. "What about the baby? We can't break up our family." Caroline's lips tightened. "You broke it. You chose Meghan over me, over your unborn child. I'll make sure you still have a chance to be in the baby's life. But as for us, we're finished." He lunged to grab her hands, but she pulled back, an instinctive wave of revulsion coursing through her. She'd shed too many tears, endured too many humiliations. There was no going back. His eyes narrowed. "You're making a huge mistake. Meghan is she's nothing," he argued, but the ring and the nightly escapades said otherwise. Caroline felt a sudden calmness in her rage. If she's nothing, then you threw away everything for nothing, she said, turning her back on him, walking upstairs. She needed to rest, for the baby's sake and for the long legal road ahead. Behind her, she heard Richard curse, banging a fist on the wall in frustration, but she didn't look back. She silently prayed for strength. She was choosing to walk her own path, free of deception, even if it meant facing an uncertain future as a single mother. At least she would have her dignity, and that was the final straw. The next morning, Caroline woke early. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and the baby kept shifting in her womb, as if agitated by her stress. She gingerly rose from bed and headed downstairs, half expecting to find Richard passed out on the sofa. Instead, she discovered he had left at dawn. The house felt cold and empty, reminding her that she was effectively alone now. Still, a faint sense of relief accompanied the loneliness. She didn't have to face his excuses or manipulations for the moment. Feeling drained but resolute, Caroline checked her phone. Dozens of messages flooded in, some from concerned relatives, others from acquaintances who had caught wind of the drama. Her cousin, Gabriela Mendez, a sharp-witted journalist, had texted, "If you need me to run a story about that vile mistress, just say the word. I'll roast them." Caroline managed a small smile at the offer, though she wasn't sure a public scandal would help her mental health or her baby's well-being. She did, however, accept an invitation from Linda Freeman to meet for coffee. They chose a cozy cafe called The Brew and Bloom, a place with pastel decor and sweet pastries, exactly what Caroline needed for comfort. She arrived, noticing Linda waving from a corner table. Linda's expression radiated concern as Caroline approached. Once seated, Linda reached over and squeezed Caroline's hand. "How are you holding up, sweetie?" Caroline tried to smile, but her eyes grew moist. "I've been better," she admitted. "I filed for divorce, Linda. I never imagined this would be my life, especially not while pregnant. But I had no choice." Linda nodded sympathetically, her bright red hair framing her warm, empathetic gaze. "I'm proud of you. It's not easy, but it's brave. I've been there, remember, when Mark left me for that paralegal. I thought my world had ended. But trust me, life goes on, and you'll find a new purpose." Caroline's heart lifted slightly. She recalled how devastated Linda had been, yet she emerged stronger, eventually meeting someone who valued her deeply. "I just worry about raising this baby alone," Caroline confessed, stirring her herbal tea. "I envisioned a family, 2 parents in one home. Now, everything is shattered." Linda leaned forward. "Listen, a single-parent home filled with love and stability is better than a 2-parent home plagued by deceit and fighting. You'll give your child all the love and care needed. And you'll have help. I'm here. Your family's here. You're not alone." Emotions welled up, but Caroline nodded gratefully. They talked about the next steps in divorce proceedings, about how Caroline could gather emotional support. Linda even recommended a prenatal yoga class that had helped her friend manage stress during a high-tension pregnancy. As they finished their drinks, Caroline felt a surge of resolve. She was not powerless. She had allies, a supportive family, and enough resources to protect herself and the baby from Richard's worst. That resolve was tested later that afternoon when Caroline received an unexpected call from an unknown number. She picked up, only to hear a smug female voice. "Hello, Caroline. It's Megan Hughes." Caroline's stomach clenched. She gripped the phone, glancing around her living room as if Megan might pop out of a closet. "What do you want?" Caroline asked, her tone icy. "I'm calling to clarify some things," Megan said, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Richard told me you're divorcing him. I just wanted to make sure you understand that he and I are going to be together no matter what." Caroline bristled. It took every ounce of self-control not to unleash a torrent of insults. "It's none of my concern who he chooses, Megan. I filed for divorce because he's a cheating liar. Congratulations on inheriting that problem. Megan laughed softly. Oh, I'm not worried. He's signing over certain assets to me to ensure I'm comfortable. But you're pregnant and left in the dust. That can't feel good. A wave of righteous anger coursed through Caroline. You're deluded if you think I'll be the one left empty-handed. My lawyer is already on it, and trust me, the court won't look kindly on a man who abandons his pregnant wife to splurge on a mistress. Silence hummed over the line. When Megan spoke again, the saccharine tone was gone. Richard owes me, Caroline. If you push too hard for his money, you'll make an enemy of me. And I can be very persuasive, especially with the media. Caroline's heart pounded. She took a deep breath. You're threatening me because you want to protect your ill-gotten finances? Good luck. I'm not scared of you. The truth is on my side, and I have the receipts to prove it. Megan hissed, Fine, do what you must. Just remember, I won't let you or anyone else ruin what Richard and I have. She hung up, leaving Caroline's ears ringing with the menacing vow. Caroline stood frozen, phone in hand, a swirl of fury and defiance fueling her. She whispered to herself, She's underestimating me. If Megan Hughes thought she could bully a pregnant woman into submission, she was in for a rude awakening. Caroline had endured enough heartbreak. Now, she would show them both that she wasn't someone to be trifled with. The day of the preliminary divorce hearing dawned under a grey sky, spitting cold rain. Caroline braced herself for the event, dressing in a simple black maternity dress that flattered her growing belly. Anxiety fluttered through her stomach. This was her first time stepping into a courtroom for something so personal. But she reminded herself that this step was crucial for reclaiming her life and securing her child's future. Natalie Pierce met her at the courthouse entrance, providing a steady presence. We have enough evidence to push for a favorable settlement, so don't worry, she assured Caroline. Stay calm, answer honestly if addressed, and let me handle the rest. Caroline nodded, swallowing her nerves. As they walked into the corridor, she spotted Richard, flanked by his lawyer, a tall, stern-faced man named Gerald Stark. She also noticed Megan Hughes, lurking a few steps behind, draped in an ostentatious fur coat despite the mild weather. When their eyes met, Megan gave her a smug, half-smile, wiggling her diamond-ringed fingers. Caroline turned away, refusing to play into the mistress's taunts. In the small hearing room, both parties sat at opposing tables. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called the session to order. Natalie presented a concise summary of Caroline's complaints: infidelity, dissipation of marital assets, emotional distress, and the need for child support. She also argued that Caroline should retain the marital home, as it provided stability for the impending baby. Gerald Stark rebutted by downplaying Richard's affair, labeling it a personal indiscretion that bore little relevance to the financial aspects. He claimed that the diamond ring purchase was Richard's personal expenditure, separate from marital funds. He insisted that Caroline's demands for alimony and child support were exorbitant, given that she came from an upper-middle-class background and had potential earning power as an event planner. Caroline's anger flared, but she kept her composure, remembering Natalie's advice. When she was called to speak, she explained, voice trembling, that she had left full-time work at Richard's request to focus on the pregnancy. She had done so assuming they were a team, only to discover he was funneling money into grandiose gifts for a mistress. She reiterated her concerns about the baby's well-being. I will not allow my child's financial security to be jeopardized by my husband's extravagant spending on another woman, she concluded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Richard was called to speak next. He looked uncharacteristically haggard, dark circles under his eyes. I made mistakes, he admitted, shifting uncomfortably. "But I still love my wife. I'd like to work things out." His contrite tone grated on Caroline. Just days ago, he'd been partying with Megan. Now, he was claiming regret. She suspected it was a ploy to reduce the divorce settlement. He then argued that the ring's payment came from his personal investment gains. "It wasn't from our joint account," he insisted. "I have the statements to prove it." But Natalie was quick to highlight large, unexplained withdrawals that preceded the ring's purchase. The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing at the documents each lawyer submitted. When the hearing concluded, the judge set another date for further proceedings, instructing both sides to gather more evidence of asset distribution. In the interim, the judge ruled that Richard must continue paying the mortgage on the marital home, as Caroline needed stability for her pregnancy. She also set a temporary support order so Caroline could manage living expenses. Richard's financial obligations started that very week. Outside the courtroom, Megan wasted no time. She sauntered up to Caroline, flipping her glossy hair. "How does it feel to cling to him like this? Accepting his money after you tossed him out?" Caroline blinked, momentarily stunned. "I'm not clinging." The court recognized that a pregnant woman deserves financial support from the man who helped create this baby. It's called responsibility. She turned to walk away, but Megan grabbed her arm. "Let go of me," Caroline hissed, yanking free. Some passers-by turned to watch the commotion. Megan's voice turned venomous. "Richard is mine now. The only reason he's playing the remorseful husband card is to save face in court. Once this is over, he'll be free and you'll be left with your pity money." Caroline's blood boiled. But before she could respond, Linda Freeman appeared from behind, stepping between them. "If I were you," Linda told Megan icily, "I'd worry less about harassing a pregnant woman and more about how quickly your sugar daddy might dump you if the law clamps down on his finances." Megan scowled, eyes darting to Richard, who stood by the exit, pinned under Gerald Stark's stern talk. She stomped away without another word. Caroline felt her heart pounding, tears close to the surface, but she steadied herself, grateful for Linda's timely intervention. "Thank you," she breathed. Linda patted her shoulder. "That woman has some nerve. Don't let her get to you. You're doing what's right for you and the baby." Caroline exhaled, nodding. The first legal skirmish was over, but the war was far from finished. Still, she felt a rush of empowerment. The judge's acknowledgement of her rights, Linda's unwavering friendship, and the baby's resolute kicks in her belly reminded her that she was no victim. She was fighting for her future, and she was determined to win. In the days following the preliminary hearing, tension escalated in the Winston household. Richard, still technically co-owner of their home, made surprise visits to gather belongings. Each time, the encounters with Caroline erupted in arguments. Sometimes he insisted he'd changed and wanted her back. Other times, he accused her of greed and spite. His mercurial behavior left Caroline on edge. One Saturday morning, as Caroline was sorting baby clothes in the nursery, she heard the front door bang open. Richard's voice echoed down the hall. She tensed he hadn't given any notice of coming by. Bracing herself, she walked into the living room to find him rummaging through drawers. "What are you doing?" she demanded, arms crossed over her pregnant belly. He glanced up, face flushed. "I'm looking for some paperwork. I have every right to be here." Caroline's pulse quickened, but she willed herself to remain calm. "I told you to text or call before coming. This stress isn't good for me or the baby," Richard sneered. "Since when do you care about my stress? You're the one who's milking the courts for every dollar," she bristled. "I'm not milking anything. I'm fighting for what's fair for our child. If you don't want to support me, at least support your baby." He scoffed, slamming a drawer shut. "That child is mine too. Once it's born, I'll do my part. But I'm not going to let you bankrupt me." Caroline's voice trembled with rage. If you're so worried about finances, maybe you shouldn't have dropped a fortune on Meghan's ring." His expression darkened at the mention of Meghan. "She's different. She appreciates me." He paused, running a frustrated hand through his hair. "But I never wanted it to go this far. I never wanted to lose you." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Then you shouldn't have cheated." She motioned toward the door. "Just go, Richard." He hesitated, glancing around the living room where they once cuddled to watch movies, celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. A flicker of regret crossed his features. For a fleeting moment, Caroline felt an ache for the man she once loved, the man who might have been a good father. But that man had become a stranger. Richard sighed. "You know, this is all your fault, too. You became so focused on the baby you forgot about me." The words cut deep, and Caroline felt a wave of nausea, part pregnancy-related, part emotional shock. She steadied herself against the couch. "I'm pregnant with your child," she retorted, voice shaky. "If you can't handle your wife focusing on a baby, that says more about you than me." Without waiting for his reply, she turned and walked away, retreating to the nursery. Behind her, she heard him curse, rummage a bit more, then storm out. When the front door slammed, she allowed herself to weep. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was the betrayal, the blame shifting, the cruel notion that she was somehow at fault for devoting attention to a baby they both agreed to have. She sank into the rocking chair, tears dripping onto the soft pink blanket she'd folded for her daughter. She'd recently learned the baby was a girl during an ultrasound. She whispered, "I'm sorry you have to feel all this, but I promise I'll keep you safe." Gently stroking her belly, she closed her eyes and forced her breathing to slow. The house felt emptier than ever. In that moment, she resolved to accelerate the divorce proceedings if possible. She couldn't keep confronting him in this toxic cycle of blame. The child deserved a peaceful environment, and every day that passed with Richard's looming presence threatened that peace. Word spread quickly that the divorce between Richard and Caroline Winston was turning ugly. Gossip columns relished the story, the pregnant wife scorned, the mistress who boasted a diamond ring. Even tabloids like the New York Daily Star published headlines, "Millionaire mogul's affair sparks nasty divorce. Pregnant wife takes him to court." For Caroline, the exposure felt invasive. She only left the house for doctor's appointments, legal meetings, and occasionally to see supportive friends like Linda. When she did, curious onlookers or reporters tried to snap photos. She wore oversized sunglasses and scarves to conceal her identity, but the stress mounted. One afternoon, she received a call from her cousin Gabriella, who sounded breathless. "Caroline, check the gossip sites. Meghan Hughes is publicly airing her grievances against you." She gave some interview full of lies. Heart pounding, Caroline opened her laptop. Sure enough, on an entertainment website, she found an article titled, "Meghan Hughes Speaks Her Truth. The Wife Bullied Me from Day One." In it, Meghan painted herself as a misunderstood lover who fell in love with Richard after his wife neglected him. She claimed Caroline threatened and harassed her, forced Richard to buy gifts out of fear. She'd smear his reputation. Meghan even hinted that Caroline's pregnancy was planned to trap Richard, a statement so vile that Caroline almost threw her laptop in rage. She called Linda, voice shaking. "Can you believe the nerve of this woman? She's lying to the press, acting like she's the victim." Linda tried to reassure her. "It's a tactic, Caroline. She's trying to sway public opinion, maybe hoping it helps Richard's side in court. Don't stoop to her level. Keep building a strong legal case." Later that day, Caroline met with Natalie Pierce to discuss the recent developments. Natalie sighed upon hearing Meghan's claims. "We can't control the media, but we can control the narrative in court. I advise you not to respond publicly. Let Meghan rant. The real battle is in the judge's chamber." Caroline nodded wearily. It's just exhausting to see her tarnish my name. I'm pregnant. I don't need this stress. Natalie gave her a sympathetic look. I understand. Let's shift focus to finalizing the financial records. We've subpoenaed the jewelry store for the receipt of that diamond ring. If it shows a debit from any joint account, that's a significant point in our favor. They compiled more documents, highlighting suspicious transfers from Richard's business accounts to personal accounts, hinting that he might be hiding money. Meanwhile, Jenkins, the private investigator, uncovered that Megan had a history of latching onto wealthy men and leaving once their funds dried up. He provided statements from previous boyfriends, describing how Megan manipulated them into buying expensive gifts before abruptly vanishing. Armed with this intel, Caroline felt renewed determination. If Megan planned to drag her name through the mud, Caroline would respond by unveiling the mistress's manipulative track record in court. Caroline herself intended to remain above the public fray, refusing to give tabloids an inflammatory quote. Despite the chaos, Caroline found solace in small joys, folding tiny onesies, picking out pastel colors for the nursery walls, even sharing baby name ideas with Linda. She refused to let Megan's vendetta overshadow the excitement of welcoming a new life. Yes, this pregnancy was marred by heartbreak and stress, but it was also a beacon of hope for Caroline, a reminder that love and innocence still existed. She did worry about how the negative press might affect her daughter in the future. Children sometimes learn of their parents' conflicts. But Caroline resolved that one day she'd explain, gently, why she had to stand up for herself and her child. She'd emphasize that no one should remain in a marriage built on betrayal and manipulation. The next court date loomed, promising more conflict. Still, Caroline clung to the belief that truth would prevail. Megan Hughes could flaunt her diamond ring and spin her sob story, but the legal system wouldn't be swayed by gossip columns. For the sake of the baby, Caroline was determined to see justice served no matter how loudly the mistress fought back. The second major court date arrived on a crisp morning. Caroline wore a tailored navy maternity dress that felt empowering. She was nearly 7 months pregnant now, her belly unmistakable. The baby was active, reminding her at every turn that she had a precious life, depending on her strength. Natalie Pierce walked by her side as they entered the courthouse. Just before stepping into the courtroom, Caroline caught sight of Richard and Megan. The mistress had the audacity to show up again, this time wearing a tight designer dress and flaunting the enormous diamond ring. Caroline's stomach churned, but she lifted her chin, refusing to cower. Once seated, the judge wasted no time. We're here to address the financial disclosures, marital asset division, and the legitimacy of certain expenditures in light of Miss S. Winston's pregnancy and Mr. Winston's admitted infidelity. Natalie presented evidence from the jewelry store subpoena. It conclusively showed that $75,000 came from the Winstons' joint account funds, originally earmarked for the baby's expenses. Although the ring had cost more, the store's records were enough to prove that part of the purchase used marital resources. Caroline's fury flared anew, imagining how many baby essentials that $75,000 could have covered. Gerald Stark tried to deflect, arguing that Richard had replenished the account with his personal investments. But Natalie countered that the deposit Richard made arrived after Caroline filed for divorce, possibly an attempt to mask the wrongdoing. The judge frowned, demanding more clarity from Richard. As Richard fumbled through explanations, Megan, seated behind the defense table, kept tossing haughty looks at Caroline. Several times, the judge had to request decorum. The tension crackled in the air. Caroline's turn came to speak about the stress she endured. She described how, at a crucial time in her pregnancy, she had to navigate discovering her husband's affair, Megan's public taunts, and financial insecurity. She explained how the diverted funds threatened her prenatal care. Her voice caught as she recounted the emotional pain, but she pressed on, determined to show the court that she wasn't overreaching, she merely wanted justice for her unborn child and herself. Finally, the judge addressed Richard. "Mr. Winston, the evidence suggests you used joint funds for a personal affair. You also left your pregnant wife with limited support while you maintained a second relationship. This court must consider the unborn child's interests as paramount. I'm inclined to grant Miss S. Winston a significant portion of the marital assets to ensure the child's welfare." Gerald Stark interjected, trying to lessen the blow, but the judge was firm. She scheduled a final hearing to finalize the property division and child support arrangements, stating, "Unless there's a stark turnaround in evidence, I see no reason to alter this course." Caroline's spirits soared. Megan, on the other hand, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. She shot daggers at Caroline, no doubt seething that her gravy train might be curtailed. Richard sank in his chair, shoulders slumped, as reality began to settle upon him. Outside the courtroom, the press waited. Natalie whisked Caroline past them with a quick, no comment. But a few reporters shouted questions, peppering them with rumors about Megan's meltdown inside. Caroline glimpsed Richard and Megan behind them, locked in what appeared to be a heated argument. She overheard Megan hiss, "I won't be left with nothing," before the crowd closed in around them. By the time Caroline and Natalie reached the street, her heart was pounding. "We're in a good position," Natalie said, gently guiding her away from the media scrum. "Stay strong. The next hearing should seal the settlement." Caroline exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her belly. The baby kicked, as if cheering her on. She allowed herself a small smile. For all the heartbreak, the legal battles, and public humiliation, she was on the cusp of securing a stable future for herself and her daughter. Caroline found herself 8 months pregnant, exhausted from the endless legal wrangling and media scrutiny that had plagued her for weeks. The second major hearing had ended with the judge warning her estranged husband, Richard, that misusing joint funds for a mistress would not go unpunished. Now, as she waited for the final court date, she felt both anxious and oddly relieved that an end was in sight. Her divorce attorney, Natalie Pierce, kept her informed about every development, from Richard's attempts to shift money around to the documents needed to finalize the settlement. Caroline tried to focus on her impending motherhood, but she battled late-night doubts. Each time the baby shifted or kicked, a wave of protectiveness surged in her. This child deserved stability, something her current circumstances lacked. She had little appetite for the tabloids' daily rants about the pregnant wife scorned and the diamond-flaunting mistress. She simply wanted to leave the betrayal behind. Her friend Linda Freeman often dropped by with groceries or prepared meals, determined to ease the burden. One afternoon, Linda arrived cradling a small box wrapped in pastel ribbon. Inside was a handmade baby blanket, embroidered with the name Caroline had chosen weeks earlier, Sophie Winston. Caroline felt tears burn her eyes. Seeing her daughter's name in delicate pink thread transformed the swirl of anxieties into renewed hope, Linda told her. A single-parent home can be a sanctuary if it's filled with love and honesty. Caroline clung to those words, reminding herself that her strength would guide Sophie into a bright future. Meanwhile, rumors flew that Richard was under severe financial strain, caught between legal obligations and a mistress demanding more gifts to maintain her lavish lifestyle. Caroline learned from their private investigator that Megan Hughes might have threatened to expose even more about Richard's personal dealings if he failed to keep her satisfied. Though Caroline's sympathies had run dry, she found a grim satisfaction in knowing that Richard's choices were catching up to him. Then came the day before the final hearing, when Caroline agreed to meet Richard in a public cafe. He looked disheveled, tie askew, eyes hollow. Over a half-finished cup of coffee, he claimed he was ending things with Megan. "She's toxic," he said, voice trembling. "We've been tearing each other apart." When he suggested they might reconcile, Caroline felt a flash of the old pain. She shook her head. "There's no going back. We can try to co-parent, but I can't trust you again." He stared at her pregnant belly, tears flickering in his eyes, then quietly nodded. The following morning, Caroline headed to the courthouse under a crisp April sky. She wore a loose-fitting dress that accommodated her bump. Every step reminded her how close she was to meeting Sophie. Linda and Natalie supported her as they passed through the media throng, ignoring intrusive questions. Inside, she found Richard slumped at the defense table, looking resigned. This time, Megan was conspicuously absent. Once proceedings began, Natalie methodically presented the evidence. Bank statements showing Richard's extravagant spending, testimony confirming he'd left Caroline without adequate financial security, and clear proof he'd used shared funds for Megan's diamond ring. Gerald Stark, Richard's lawyer, tried to mitigate the damage, but the judge was unmoved. She declared Caroline entitled to retain the house and a sizable lump sum payment for the stress and hardships endured during pregnancy. Monthly child support would commence the moment Sophie was born. The judge further affirmed joint legal custody, but physical custody would remain primarily with Caroline, ensuring stability for mother and child. A stunned silence followed. Richard looked toward Caroline, and for a brief moment she saw genuine remorse etched in his face. She managed a small nod. There was no victory in the destruction of their marriage, only the closure she needed to protect herself and Sophie. Exiting the courthouse, Caroline felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The process had been grueling, but now she could finally breathe. "I'm proud of you," Linda whispered, as they ducked into a taxi, leaving Richard behind with his regrets and the media's endless curiosity. In that quiet cab ride home, Caroline placed a hand over her belly, promising Sophie a peaceful life, untainted by betrayal and self-doubt. A few weeks later, Caroline went into labor late one night. Linda rushed her to the hospital, where she endured hours of contractions before finally meeting her daughter's gaze. In that instant, Sophie blinking up at her under the bright maternity ward lights, Caroline felt a love so fierce it eclipsed the heartbreak she'd endured. When Richard arrived the next day, looking awkward and unsure, Caroline allowed him a brief visit. She reminded him that if he wanted a role in Sophie's life, he'd need to be responsible, honest, and consistent. Returning home with her newborn, Caroline settled into a new routine. The nursery's pastel colors and the gentle hush of lullabies offered a stark contrast to the turmoil she'd faced. She rocked Sophie in her arms, breathing in the baby's sweet scent, and realized that this was her true new beginning, a chance to create a home grounded in love, stability, and respect. Whatever storms had raged around her, they now felt distant. The diamond ring, the media frenzy, Megan's flaunting they had lost their power to wound her. In their place stood Caroline's unwavering resolve to give Sophie a life brimming with hope, honesty, and a mother's unfaltering devotion. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of secrets, betrayal, and hard-won freedom. Caroline's journey shows how life can shatter our expectations in the most painful ways, yet also how the fierce love for an unborn child and the support of trusted allies can pave a way forward. When faced with a mistress flaunting a diamond ring and a once loving husband turned distant, Caroline chose courage. She filed for divorce to protect her future and her baby's well-being, proving that no shiny trinket compares to self-respect and the promise of a peaceful home.
They say every marriage has its secrets, some small enough to slip under the radar, others large enough to crack the very foundations of trust. But what if the secret is discovered in the most unforgiving spotlight of all, a crowded upscale restaurant? And what if, at the exact moment, a wife learns about her husband's betrayal? She's carrying his child, unsure whether to expose him, protect him, or destroy everything in one impulsive move. This story follows the meteoric rise and catastrophic fall of Derek Harrington, a man who had it all until one dinner turned his world into a firestorm of scandal and investigation. Derek Harrington had always exuded a confidence that verged on arrogance. He was the type of man people noticed in a room, tall, well-groomed, with an intense gaze that made you think he saw your secrets before you even decided to trust him. At 37, he was already heading one of the fastest-growing private tech investment firms in the country. Harrington Ventures nestled in the heart of New York City. Many had whispered comparisons. He could be the next Elon Musk, or he's aiming to dethrone Bill Gates in philanthropic efforts. Of course, those comparisons were mostly hot air in the media, but Derek ate them up like candy and fueled his ambition further. He had grown up in a modest home in Syracuse, New York, the son of a middle school teacher and an unemployed mechanic. Derek swore to himself at a young age that he would never again know the taste of poverty and uncertainty. If there was a mountain, he would climb it. If there was a competitor, he would annihilate them, or better yet, buy them out. Ever since his first big deal, a startup buyout that netted him a cool $20 million by the age of 26, Derek became addicted to the thrill of high-stakes ventures. His wife, Catherine Harrington, was the silent strength behind him. Once Catherine Barnes, she had come from an entirely different world, an only child raised in Connecticut by a wealthy yet tight-knit family who adored her. Catherine's father, Alexander Barnes, had a small but respectable real estate firm that catered to elite clients. Catherine had an aura of class that Derek desperately needed. Although he was confident in boardrooms and pitch meetings, he often floundered in high society's intricacies. Catherine taught him how to navigate those elite circles with charm and grace. For the past 6 years, their marriage had been a blend of love, shared ambition, and occasional tension, particularly since Derek began pouring all his time into Harrington Ventures. Catherine had repeatedly asked for a child, a family. Derek always said, soon pushing it down his list of priorities. But finally, to Catherine's breathless joy, she became pregnant. Derek, for his part, seemed excited, though many nights he would return home after midnight, exhausted, complaining about client dinners or late-night strategy sessions. Still, Catherine believed in him. She believed in his vision, in his ability to provide not just for her, but for their soon-to-arrive child. Even if love had cooled into routine, she trusted Derek would protect their family. She had no idea her entire life would be thrown upside down by one small choice, deciding to meet an old friend for dinner in the heart of Manhattan. Catherine had not planned to be at the upscale restaurant Aux Merveilles that particular night. She was 8 months pregnant and feeling more fatigued than usual. But her college friend, Melanie Carter, was passing through New York for the first time in years and insisted on seeing her. To Catherine, it felt like an unexpected gift, an escape from waiting at home alone for Derek to walk through the door at some unknown hour. Melanie had chosen Aux Merveilles because she'd read about it in a luxury travel magazine. The interior glimmered with crystal chandeliers, and each table was separated by translucent screens that glowed with soft amber light. The gentle hum of hushed conversations filled the air, occasionally interrupted by the clink of expensive dinnerware. Catherine arrived early, leaning on the hostess stand for a moment to steady herself. A sympathetic staff member immediately guided her to a plush velvet seat and offered a glass of water. She felt a bit out of place in her maternity dress, noting the swirl of elegant women in cocktail dresses and men in tailored suits. But she brushed off the discomfort. She was here to see her friend, not to impress the Manhattan elite. While waiting for Melanie, Catherine decided to freshen up in the restroom. On her way back, something caught her attention through the filmy screen of a private dining area. At first, she had no idea why her gaze lingered there. She could see a man's silhouette, tall and commanding, and across from him sat a slim figure with flowing dark hair. Catherine's heart twitched. The tilt of the man's head, the way he gestured with his hand, that was Derek's mannerism. But it couldn't be. Derek had told her he was in an urgent meeting on the other side of town. Her heart pounding. Catherine took careful steps toward the screen, making sure to stay hidden behind the plush drapery that separated the main dining area from the private alcoves. A waiter passed by, but she quickly turned away, pretending to examine a painting on the wall until he was gone. Then she returned her gaze to the table. Yes. It was Derek. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, the kind he wore for special private events. And he wasn't dining with a business associate. His companion was a woman with an air of cold, dazzling beauty. Catherine didn't recognize her immediately. Maybe she was a client. But then she noticed the way the woman's hand stretched across the table to rest on Derek's fingers, a gesture far too intimate for a business meeting. Catherine's stomach churned. She felt dizzy. She almost rushed forward to confront him, but some primal sense of caution rooted her to the spot. She wasn't prepared for a scene. She didn't know if she was strong enough to face the answers to the burning questions swirling in her mind. So she watched. Derek leaned in, and the woman did the same, her glossy black hair falling forward to frame her face. Catherine could make out the name Sabrina Chen from the conversation. They chuckled softly, and Derek brushed a strand of the woman's hair back behind her ear. Catherine's hands shook tears threatening to flood her eyes. She pressed herself against the wall. She needed to get out of there, needed to breathe. She turned and hurried away, nearly running into a startled Melanie who was just arriving. Melanie took one look at Catherine's pale face, then glanced curiously at the private alcove. "Are you okay?" she asked, hands gripping Catherine's arms gently. "My goodness, you look like you've seen a ghost." In a strangled voice, Catherine replied, "I'm not feeling well, Mel. Can we go somewhere else?" Melanie, always sensitive, nodded without question. She guided Catherine outside, hailed a taxi, and insisted they go back to Catherine's penthouse so she could rest. Catherine murmured something about not wanting to be alone, about needing to talk. Once in the taxi, she told Melanie everything that Derek was there with another woman, clearly more than a business associate. Her friend listened, anger flaming in her eyes. "You need to confront him," Melanie said. "He can't get away with this, especially now when you're about to have his child." But Catherine felt paralyzed. Her mind spun with a million scenarios, none of them good. She wanted the safety of denial, to pretend she didn't witness the betrayal. But she also wanted the raw truth. By the time they reached her penthouse, she had made a decision she would wait for Derek to come home. He would have to look her in the eye and explain. Night stretched on with excruciating slowness. Melanie offered to stay, but Catherine insisted she'd manage. She needed to confront her husband alone. So Melanie left with repeated promises that Catherine call her for any reason, day or night. The apartment felt cavernous once Catherine was alone. Her baby kicked inside her as if sensing her mother's distress. Sometime near midnight, Catherine dozed off on the living room couch, still in her maternity dress and heels, phone clutched in her trembling hand. She awoke to the click of the front door. Derek stepped in laptop bag over his shoulder tie, slightly loosened. He paused when he saw her lying on the couch in the dim light. "You're still awake?" he asked, crossing the room to place a kiss on her forehead. His breath smelled faintly of wine. Catherine recoiled, the sting of his betrayal fresh in her mind. She struggled to compose herself, but emotion burst forth. "Where were you?" Derek froze, obviously caught off guard by her accusatory tone. "I told you I had a meeting." "Don't lie," Catherine shouted. "I saw you, Derek. I saw you at Aux Merveilles with some woman named Sabrina Chen. You were touching her hair." She choked on the words, tears forming again. Derek's face went pale, then hardened with defiance. "You were spying on me." "Catherine, what were you doing there? Having dinner with a friend," she shot back. "But that's not the point. Don't try to twist this around. Just tell me the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "She's just a client. Nothing more. The hair thing, it was just a friendly gesture. You know how these international investors can be. They appreciate closeness, personal connections. She's considering a large investment in Harrington Ventures." Catherine stared at him, heart twisting with disbelief. "I'm not a child, Derek. I know what I saw. That was no casual client dinner." He let out a breath, lips pressed together. "Okay, we're close. But it's complicated. Sabrina has connections with major stakeholders in Asia. She expects a certain rapport. If I don't keep her happy, we could lose a multi-million-dollar deal. So you're sleeping with her to make her invest." Catherine's voice trembled with fury and despair. "It's not that simple," Derek said, but he didn't deny it. "This is business, Catherine. And it's not... it's not what you think. Yes, she's flirtatious. Maybe I crossed a line, but it's for the company, for our future." Catherine stood, a surge of anger giving her strength, even in her pregnant state. "Our future, our child's future. This is how you plan to secure it, by betraying me." Derek's eyes flickered with guilt. But then he hardened again. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Harrington Ventures is on the verge of a major breakthrough. A single large investment could catapult us into the realm of industry giants. I can't afford to let moral qualms hold me back." Catherine felt as if the floor were dropping out from beneath her. She recognized Derek's ambition had always been borderline obsessive. But hearing him admit he'd compromise their marriage, the very sanctity of their relationship just for a deal, she had no words. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her, mingled with heartbreak. "Get out," she finally managed, voice weak yet resolute. "Catherine," he started. She turned away. "Sleep in the guest room. I can't even look at you right now." He opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. Silent, he retreated to the guest bedroom, leaving Catherine to collapse onto the couch in tears. As she drifted in a half-conscious state of heartbreak, a single question throbbed in her mind. How could he do this to us? Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, stirring Catherine from a fitful sleep. She sat up, her body aching from the night spent on the couch. She half expected Derek to appear with an apology or at least an explanation better than it's for the deal. But the apartment was silent. A check of the guest room revealed he was gone. No note, no text. Only the faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. Catherine felt bitterness coil inside her like a snake. Had he left for work as though nothing had happened? Trying to compose herself, she went about her morning routine, feeding their fluffy grey cat Winston, who circled her legs anxiously, making a cup of tea, gazing out at the city skyline. But none of it soothed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melanie. She simply texted, "I'm here for you," followed by a heart emoji. Catherine typed a quick thanks and debated what to do next. Should she confront Derek at his office? Should she call her father? Confide in him? Then as she paced through the living room, the TV caught her attention. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom, and the anchor's solemn voice filled the silence. Ongoing investigation into potential insider trading and financial misconduct at Harrington Ventures. Derek Harrington's office has not yet released a statement, but sources say officials from the SEC are looking into suspicious activity. Catherine fumbled for the remote and turned up the volume. Her heart pounded with alarm. Investigation insider trading. This was the first she'd heard of anything official. The anchor went on. Harrington Ventures soared to prominence in the last few years, drawing comparisons to major tech moguls like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. But now regulators question whether certain investment gains came from illicitly obtained information. Derek Harrington was spotted at a private dinner last night with an unidentified associate, leading to speculation on whether this meeting is connected to the alleged misconduct. In that moment, Catherine felt a strange mixture of shock and vindication. She remembered the hush of Oxmervale, the private table Derek's murmured conversation with Sabrina Chen. Was this the reason for that meeting? She grabbed her phone and scrolled through financial news sites. All of them were erupting with the story. Harrington Ventures under siege. One headline read, "Inside the SEC probe teased another." She found nothing that concretely linked Sabrina Chen to the scandal, only rumors that Derek was meeting with someone who might hold the key to hush money or secret deals. Anxiety clawed at Catherine's stomach. This was beyond a marital betrayal. It might be a legal catastrophe. She needed answers. She dialed Derek's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Her next thought was to contact his assistant, the ever-efficient Amanda Wu, who always picked up or responded promptly. But even Amanda's phone rang until voicemail kicked in. Fearing the worst, Catherine decided to put aside her heartbreak for a moment and do what she could to protect her family. She reached for her coat and bag, then headed out the door, determined to confront Derek at his office if necessary. The offices of Harrington Ventures occupied the 20th through 22nd floors of a gleaming steel and glass tower in Midtown. When Catherine arrived, the usual bustle in the lobby was replaced by a tense hush. Small clusters of employees whispered, casting anxious glances toward a row of men in dark suits who were busy rifling through documents and laptops. It was clear the investigation was well underway. Catherine stepped off the elevator on the 22nd floor, where Derek's corner office overlooked the city. She braced herself for the sight of more investigators. Instead, she found the reception area swarming with them. She approached a stern-faced man, flipping through files. "Excuse me, I'm Catherine Harrington. I need to see my husband." He regarded her warily. "Do you have an appointment?" She almost laughed at the absurdity. "Appointment, I'm his wife. Is Derek in his office?" The man jerked his head toward a closed door. "He's in a meeting with the SEC officials and his legal team." "Best if you wait." Catherine felt her patience slip. "I'm not waiting," she said firmly. Without another glance, she marched to Derek's office door and turned the handle. Locked. She knocked, ignoring the mutterings of the investigators behind her. After an agonizing minute, the door swung open, revealing Derek's lawyer. A slim woman in a sharp navy suit, a phone pressed to her ear. She looked Catherine up and down. "Mrs. Harrington." "We're in the middle of something." Derek's voice cut through. "Let her in." The lawyer stepped aside, and Catherine entered the office. Derek stood at his desk, arms folded, face drawn and tired. Two men in dark suits sat in chairs across from him, notes scattered on the table. They regarded Catherine neutrally before turning back to Derek. "We'll give you a moment," one of the men said, as they gathered up their documents and stepped out. An awkward hush fell. Catherine closed the door behind them. For a heartbeat, she and Derek just stared at each other, the memory of last night's argument hanging between them. His eyes flickered with guilt concern, and something else, maybe relief. "Catherine." He began running a hand over his face. "I was going to call you once this settled." Her anger reignited at his dismissive tone. "Settled, Derek. You're under investigation by the SEC. This isn't a small pothole in the road. The news is everywhere." He sighed. "Look, I can't say much right now. It's an internal matter, and our lawyers say we should cooperate, but keep quiet publicly. There have been rumors of insider trading, but it's a misunderstanding. We're sorting it out." "A misunderstanding," Catherine repeated. "Does this have anything to do with Sabrina Chen and last night's dinner?" Derek flinched at the name. "Why would you think—" "Because the news outlets are already speculating about it." "Derek," she hissed. "If you were with her to discuss some insider deal—" "Stop," he cut in, raising a hand. "I can't talk about her. Not here, not now. Let's just say I have things under control." Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Under control? "Derek, the entire office is crawling with investigators. I can't even reach your assistant." Amanda was told not to talk to anyone without the lawyers present, Derek said tightly. "She's in a conference room with them now." "This is standard procedure." "Standard procedure," Catherine echoed, her voice faint with incredulity. "How far does this go, Derek? Because if you think I'm going to sit at home pregnant while you're possibly facing criminal charges—" "I didn't do anything illegal," he snapped, though sweat beaded at his temple. "Sabrina, it's complicated. She brought me some stock tips about a company we were considering investing in. She claimed she had reliable leads." "You used them?" Catherine pressed her heart, pounding. He swallowed. "Not exactly. I just moved some assets around. I didn't know it would be considered insider information. She told me it was her own research, that it was legit. I never expected the SEC to come knocking." Catherine's mind reeled. So he had used Sabrina's tips, likely crossing a line into illegal territory. She stared at him, struggling to reconcile the charismatic man she fell in love with, the father of her unborn child, with this desperate figure in front of her. Finally she said, "What do you want from me?" "Derek." He looked pained. "I need you to trust me. I'm meeting with Sabrina this afternoon to clarify things. She owes me an explanation. If she fed me illegal tips, it's on her. My lawyers can argue that I was deceived." Catherine's breath caught. "You're meeting her again? After last night?" "It's business," he insisted. "Look, I get how bad this looks. But if you want to protect our family, you'll let me handle this. I promise I'll fix it." Part of Catherine wanted to cling to the hope that he could, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, the guilt and confusion swirling there. His ambition, once so inspiring, had turned into a reckless obsession that might cost him everything. Maybe she should walk away, call her father, pack a bag and leave. But she couldn't, at least not yet. She carried his child, and some piece of her still loved him. She nodded once. Fine. But I'm not leaving you alone in this. I'm staying in the city. I'll do what I can to help. Derek exhaled relief passing over his face. He reached for her hands, but she stepped back. I'll trust you for now, she said, voice trembling. But remember, Derek, trust isn't infinite. You've already broken it once. That afternoon, Catherine found herself restless, pacing the penthouse. The SEC had allowed Derek to remain at the office, but insisted he provide any requested documents on demand. His phone was undoubtedly monitored, and Sabrina Chen was labeled a person of interest. Catherine tried to focus on calm. She set up a quiet corner to rest, turned on soft classical music, and attempted to soothe the baby within her. Yet every time she shut her eyes, she saw Derek leaning across that table. Saw him gently touching Sabrina's hair. How did we get here? She wondered. Have I been so naive? A phone call from an unfamiliar number broke her reverie. She picked up, heart hammering. A woman's voice spoke clipped and professional. Hello, Mrs. Harrington. My name is Caroline Patterson. I'm a journalist at the New York Daily Mirror. We're working on a story about your husband's company. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Catherine's mouth went dry. No comment, she said hastily, ending the call. But within minutes, another call came from yet another journalist. And then another. It seemed the entire press corps had decided to ring her up in search of a sensational quote. She turned off her phone, trembling with anxiety. The day crawled by. When Derek finally returned home, it was well past 8. Catherine opened the door to find him grim-faced, tie, undone hair disheveled. He looked like a man fighting a war on multiple fronts. Any progress? Catherine asked quietly. He nodded. Lawyers say there's no direct evidence yet. Just allegations that we traded on insider info for a few deals. But they'll keep digging. As for Sabrina... He paused, looking away. We spoke. She claims she's just a scapegoat. She said she's taking a flight back to Hong Kong tomorrow, and that the SEC can't touch her there. Catherine's stomach twisted. So she's running. He shrugged. Or, so she says. I tried to get her to talk to my lawyers, but she refused. She's not answering calls anymore. My attorneys are furious. They say if she disappears, it'll make me look even worse, like we're trying to hide something. Catherine eyed him. Are you still sleeping with her? Derek's cheeks burned red. No. Catherine, I messed up. Okay. I let things get too close, but it was never serious. Not on my end. She wanted to believe him, but suspicion dug its claws into her mind. Is that the truth, or just what you need me to believe? He hesitated. I'm not lying to you. Look, I promise you my relationship with Sabrina was purely for business connections. Maybe it crossed lines, but I never intended to leave you. Or... She shook her head, tears threatening again. How noble, she whispered sarcastically. Derek, I can't keep doing this. I can't watch you destroy yourself and our marriage in this pursuit of power. He reached for her, his hand trembling. For the first time she sensed he was truly afraid. Catherine, if we can get past this, I'll change. I'll make it right. Just stand by me, please. Looking into his eyes, she saw remnants of the man she'd married, the one who had once had dreams of giving them a beautiful life. Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a moment, broken but together. By the next morning, Catherine felt an urgent need for counsel. She made a phone call to someone she knew and trusted her father, Alexander Barnes. Despite their somewhat strained relationship, he had never fully approved of Derek's rags to riches aggression. Her father was a steady presence in her life. "Dad," she said quietly when he picked up. "Things are bad. Derek's company is under investigation. There's rumors of insider trading." She heard him exhale. "I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I don't know," she confessed. "He might have been unfaithful too." "I feel like everything is spiraling." Her father's voice softened. "Sweetheart, you need to take care of yourself. Think about my grandchild. Stress can't be good for the baby." She stifled a sob. "I know. Dad, what should I do? Should I leave him?" Alexander was silent for a moment. "I can't decide that for you. But listen, Catherine Derek has always been a risk-taker. That's what made him successful. But it can also lead to ruin if he isn't careful. You have to consider if you can trust him to change. And if not..." She closed her eyes. "I understand." He cleared his throat. "If you need a place to stay, come home. Your old room is waiting, or I can set you up in a nearby property. No pressure. But I won't let you face this alone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she felt a measure of warmth. "Thank you, Dad. I'll let you know." After the call ended, Catherine sat by the window, watching the Manhattan skyline shimmer under the morning sun. Memories danced in her mind. Meeting Derek at a charity gala, her father hosted the spark in his eyes as he talked about turning dreams into reality, the sweet way he'd slipped a note into her coat pocket with an invitation for a first date. Where had that man gone? Meanwhile, Derek's day took a dramatic turn. He was set to appear for a voluntary discussion at the SEC offices downtown. His lawyers insisted that showing openness would help. But an hour before he was supposed to leave, a text from an unknown number arrived. "Meet me at the Park Regency Hotel room, T02. Urgent. Sabrina." His heart pounded. Why would Sabrina risk contacting him now, especially if she was supposedly leaving the country? He showed the text to his head lawyer, Edward Langley, who frowned. "That's ill-advised. She's already under suspicion." Derek frowned. "But if she has evidence to exonerate me or some angle we can use, it could save the company." Langley shook his head. "We can't stop you from going, but this is dangerous. If the SEC finds out, they might interpret it as conspiracy. You should consider letting me or one of the associates go with you." But Derek shook his head. "She might not talk if there's a lawyer present. I'll go alone, but I'll record everything." Langley frowned more deeply. "Just be careful. And whatever you do, don't offer her money or anything that can be interpreted as bribery." Derek nodded grimly. He texted Sabrina back. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Then he instructed his driver to head to the Park Regency. Anxiety prickled his skin as he imagined the worst, a sting operation, a setup by the SEC, or even blackmail from Sabrina herself. When he arrived at room 1902, he found the door slightly ajar. He knocked softly, hearing the faint sound of classical music from inside. Sabrina's voice called out, "Come in." He stepped into the suite, scanning the opulent living area. Marble floors, plush sofas, fresh roses on the coffee table. Sabrina stood by a window wearing a sleek black dress. She looked impeccable every inch, the mysterious femme fatale. Her gaze locked on Derek. "Don't be shy," she said with a purr. "We don't have much time." Derek hesitated by the door. "Why did you call me here?" She beckoned him over. As he stepped forward, she gestured for him to sit on the sofa. He remained standing. "I'm not staying long. Talk." Sabrina smiled, though tension radiated off her. "I'm leaving for Hong Kong in a few hours. I just wanted to mend things between us." "I never meant for you to get in trouble." He shook his head, anger flaring. "You handed me illegal tips. That's exactly how I got in trouble." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't pretend you didn't know the risks, Derek. You're a smart man. No one invests millions blindly. You could have done your own diligence, but you were too eager." He opened his mouth to retort, but she continued. "Anyway, let's not argue about the past. I have a proposition. I can provide documentation that proves I misled you, that I told you it was my own research, and you relied on it in good faith. If the SEC sees that you could walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist." Derek's heart skipped. "So you'll confess to lying?" She shrugged, a coy smile on her lips. "I'll say whatever you need me to say, for the right price." He clenched his jaw. "What price?" She sauntered to a small table and picked up a folder. "I have it all here, emails, transcripts. It's quite convincing. I want $5 million. Derek nearly choked. $5 million? Sabrina. That's blackmail. Her lips curled. Call it compensation. I'll be ostracized from my circles. I can't do business with you or your connections again. I'll have to rebuild from scratch. Derek's mind spun. $5 million was no small amount, but his company was worth hundreds of millions. If the investigation destroyed it, he could lose everything. Still, even if paying Sabrina might clear him, it was absolutely illegal to bribe a witness. This could bury him deeper in legal trouble. He took a step back, shaking his head. I can't do that. My lawyers would kill me. She rolled her eyes. Your lawyers, Derek. You won't need them if you're indicted. You'll be lucky to avoid jail. He stared at her, fury boiling. So this was your plan all along? To reel me in, feed me these tips and then blackmail me? Sabrina's eyes flashed. Don't be naive. You pursued me for my connections. We used each other. Now let's finish the transaction. He exhaled, attempting to steady himself. I won't pay you a cent. If you have evidence that can help me, provide it. If not, get out of my way. Her expression hardened. Think carefully, Derek. You have a lot to lose. He turned to the door. I'm done with you. As he left, his heart pounded not just with anger, but with fear. Fear that Sabrina might release evidence that would incriminate him further, or worse, twist the facts to frame him entirely. The upcoming meeting at the SEC loomed large in his mind. Back at the Harrington Ventures office, Derek quickly informed Langley of what had transpired. The lawyer's face turned pale. She asked for money. Derek, if we even hint at paying her, it could be seen as witness tampering. We have to disclose this to the SEC, or they might discover it later and accuse us of hiding it. Derek groaned. You're right. Let's get it over with. The two hurried to the SEC building where they were ushered into a conference room. Catherine, who'd insisted on coming along for moral support, sat quietly in the corner. She offered Derek a small nod of encouragement. Despite everything, she was there for him. The lead investigator, a meticulous woman named Francesca Morales, greeted them with cool politeness. Mr. Harrington, we appreciate your cooperation. We have a few questions. Langley gave a tight smile. We want to go on record that Ms. Sabrina Chen attempted to solicit money in exchange for certain statements. We did not comply. Morales leaned forward, interest piqued. That's quite an allegation. Do you have proof? Derek remembered that he had switched on his phone's recording as soon as Sabrina started talking. He glanced at Langley, who nodded. They handed over the audio file. It was risky, but they had no choice. If Sabrina tried to sell a false narrative, at least they had evidence she'd demanded money. Morales listened with headphones, her stern face revealing little reaction. Finally, she removed the headphones. We'll need to verify the authenticity of this recording. For now, it appears Ms. Chen may have engaged in blackmail. She then fixed Derek with a penetrating gaze. But that doesn't absolve you, Mr. Harrington. Regardless of Ms. Chen's motives, if you used insider information knowingly or not, you remain accountable. Derek swallowed. I understand. The interrogation began, and it felt like a slow, agonizing dance. Morales asked about each investment, each conversation with Sabrina, each trade made in the weeks prior. Derek tried to remain calm, giving honest answers, but stopping whenever Langley advised him to. At times, Catherine interjected small clarifications, like how Derek spent nights working on legitimate research, how he had never shown awareness of wrongdoing. Morales took notes meticulously. Finally, after hours, they were dismissed. Langley told them it might take weeks for the SEC to decide whether to press charges, but at least they hadn't been arrested. Catherine managed a small sigh of relief, but Derek's expression was still grim. This is far from over, he muttered. News of the SEC meeting spread quickly through financial circles. Rumors persisted that Sabrina Chen had fled the country. The press speculated wildly. Did the pregnant wife know secret mistress at center of scandal billionaire, playboy, or savvy businessman? Each headline more lurid than the last. Investors began pulling out. Harrington Ventures' stock, though private, was partially linked to a public affiliate, and its share price dropped precipitously in after-hours trading. Derek scrambled to reassure stakeholders. He wrote emails, made phone calls, pleaded for patience. Some listened, others distanced themselves. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss damage control. Catherine watched the meltdown with growing horror. She wanted to stand by Derek, but each day more revelations emerged about how close he and Sabrina had been. Photos surfaced of them at charity galas, at private dinners, looking more intimate than Derek had admitted. The press ran with the story, painting a picture of a torrid affair. Catherine felt herself roiling with a mix of jealousy, betrayal, and lingering love. One night, Derek returned home, late, throwing his keys on the kitchen counter in frustration. We lost another investor. The board is furious. Catherine, who had been restless all evening, approached him tentatively. You need a strong public statement, she suggested. Something that clarifies everything from the insider trading allegations to your relationship with Sabrina. He slammed his fist on the counter. I can't talk about the investigation publicly, Catherine. The lawyers forbid it. And as for Sabrina, I'd just be fueling the tabloid fire. She tried to maintain composure. So you do nothing? His face twisted with exhaustion. Yes, for now. We do nothing. The lawyers say we need to wait until the SEC finishes their inquiry. Then we can mount a defense. Catherine nodded numbly. She felt shut out. Every day, the tension in the penthouse grew heavier, as if invisible walls were closing in. And Derek seemed to alternate between frantic action and stony silence, leaving Catherine alone in her swirling thoughts. A few days later, Catherine's father showed up unannounced at the penthouse. Derek had gone to the office. She welcomed Alexander in, offering him tea. He studied her face, concern etched in his expression. "You look exhausted," he said. "I can't sleep," Catherine admitted. "I keep replaying everything in my head." Alexander placed a comforting hand on hers. "Come home with me, at least for a while, to clear your head. Give Derek space to sort this out." She hesitated, torn. I don't want to abandon him." Alexander sighed. "You wouldn't be abandoning him, dear. But you're pregnant, stressed, and it's not healthy. You need calm surroundings, not SEC investigators and salacious tabloids." Catherine thought of the baby, the life growing inside her. She felt a pang of guilt. She was so consumed by Derek's crisis, she barely paused to consider her own well-being. After a long moment, she nodded. "You're right. Let me pack a bag. If Derek wants to talk, he knows how to reach me." Within an hour, she was in her father's car, heading toward the tranquility of Connecticut. She left a short note for Derek. "I'm going to Dad's for a few days to rest. I hope you understand." She didn't expect an immediate response, and she got none. Days turned into a week. Catherine settled into a guest suite at her father's estate, where the staff fussed over her, ensuring she had healthy meals and plenty of rest. She felt her body relax bit by bit, though her heart still weighed heavy. She kept an eye on the news. Harrington Ventures seemed to be on the brink. More rumors of a mass investor exodus, talk of a possible resignation by Derek if indicted. Then one afternoon, Catherine received a call from an unexpected source, Amanda Wu, Derek's assistant. Amanda's voice trembled with urgency. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you should know." Catherine gripped the phone. "What is it?" A man came by the office, Kyle Peterson, one of Derek's old associates. He claimed to have documents that could prove Derek's innocence. But Derek is so busy fighting fires, he barely gave Kyle the time of day. Kyle said he discovered that Sabrina Chen had conspired with another firm to sabotage Harrington Ventures. He said it was personal for her. She wanted to ruin Derek. Something about an old family feud. Catherine's pulse raced. Wait, an old family feud? Sabrina never mentioned anything like that. "I don't have details," Amanda said. But Kyle swore he has proof. Sabrina manipulated data to make it look like Derek was trading on insider info, when in fact it was all her doing. He tried emailing Derek, but with the SEC monitor it might get lost. I think Derek's ignoring him because it sounds too far-fetched. But Kyle seems genuine. Catherine thought back to Sabrina's chilling composure, her blackmail attempt. Maybe Sabrina had orchestrated the entire fiasco, setting Derek up for a fall, while reaping her own profit. It was a terrifying thought, but it made sense given her abrupt disappearance and hush-money demands. "Amanda, can you put me in touch with Kyle directly?" Catherine asked. "Of course. I'll text you his number." Minutes later, Catherine spoke to Kyle. He explained that Sabrina's father, Wei Chen, once competed with Derek for a major Chinese tech merger. Derek's success had apparently cost Wei Chen a fortune and tarnished his reputation back home. Kyle believed Sabrina sought revenge under the guise of forging a business relationship, planning to entangle Derek in legal trouble. She fed him tips that appeared legitimate, but in reality they were gleaned from corporate espionage or manipulated data. Then she let the SEC discover them. "I have documents showing Sabrina's father orchestrated the entire infiltration," Kyle said, "and also a recorded phone call where Sabrina brags about how easy it was to seduce Derek into compliance." Catherine felt anger and relief swirl together. If Kyle's evidence was real, it could vindicate Derek. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" He hesitated. "I only discovered it a few days ago, rummaging through old servers and unsubscribed email accounts. I used to manage some side projects with Derek, but we parted ways after a disagreement. I had no idea Sabrina's infiltration ran this deep. I thought I owed it to Derek to come clean now." "Thank you," Catherine said earnestly. "Please get those documents to Derek's lawyers. And also send a copy to me." Catherine returned to the city the very next day. Her father tried to persuade her otherwise, but she insisted. "If these documents can save Derek, I need to be there," she said. At Harrington Ventures, she found Derek hunched over a conference table, scattered with papers, eyes bloodshot. The board was in an uproar. The SEC investigation was intensifying. Media outlets were calling him the next Bernie Madoff. It was chaos. Catherine entered the room and placed her hand on Derek's shoulder. He flinched at first, then turned to see her. A mixture of surprise and relief flashed across his face. "Catherine, you're back." She nodded. "I have news. I spoke to Kyle Peterson." Derek frowned. "Kyle, I haven't seen him in ages." Quickly, Catherine explained what Kyle had told her. She saw Derek's eyes widen, a spark of hope igniting. "If he really has that evidence, we can prove Sabrina was the mastermind. This changes everything." "It does," Catherine agreed. "We need to move fast, though, before Sabrina disappears for good." Derek called an emergency meeting with Langley and the legal team. Kyle arrived with a briefcase full of documents and digital files. He walked them through each piece of evidence, showing how Sabrina had infiltrated Harrington Ventures, forged research reports, and leaked them to Derek under false pretenses. The final damning piece, a recorded phone call, where Sabrina gleefully admitted Derek is so hungry for power, he won't even question where the data comes from. By the time the SEC is done with him, he'll be ruined. Langley's eyes shone with triumph. "This is exactly what we need. With this, we can build a defense that Derek was the victim of fraud. He'll still face questions about his due diligence, but it's a significant shift in liability." Derek looked stunned, as if someone had handed him a life preserver, just as he was drowning. He turned to Catherine, voice thick. "I don't deserve you. I was so reckless. I should have known better." She placed a hand over his. "Let's just get through this." Armed with the new evidence, Derek's lawyers presented everything to the SEC. The response was immediate and dramatic. Francesca Morales grilled them for hours, verifying the documents, analyzing the authenticity of the recordings, and cross-checking them against Sabrina's earlier claims. 2 days later, the SEC issued a statement. They were redirecting the focus of the investigation toward Sabrina Chen and her associates. Derek remained under scrutiny for negligence, but the criminal angle for insider trading was all but dropped. The media pounced on the story of the scheming mistress, fueling a new wave of scandalous headlines. But for Derek, the worst legal nightmares seemed to recede. He wasn't out of the woods. Entirely civil penalties for failing to perform proper diligence could still be on the table, and Harrington Ventures' reputation was badly tarnished. Investors remained wary, but at least the threat of prison no longer loomed. Throughout the madness, Catherine stayed by Derek's side, though their personal relationship remained strained. She had forgiven him enough to fight for his exoneration, but the wound of his betrayal festered. One evening, after a grueling day of damage control, they sat in the living room. Derek poured himself a stiff drink, offered Catherine sparkling water instead. They sipped in silence. "Thank you," he finally said. "For not walking away, for finding Kyle, for everything." She nodded. "I did it for our child, and maybe for the Derek I thought I knew." He winced at that. She continued, "Where do we go from here?" He drained his glass. "I can't pretend this didn't happen. I failed you. I was so blinded by ambition, I forgot the vows we made. And Sabrina." Catherine cut in gently. "Let's not talk about her anymore." She sighed. "I'm not sure what's next for us, but I do know that if we're going to move forward, we need honesty therapy and time." He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. "I'll do whatever it takes." In the weeks that followed, Derek officially stepped back from the CEO role of Harrington Ventures, appointing a trusted associate to steady the ship while he sorted out the final legal tangles. The board reluctantly agreed, seeing that Derek had become a lightning rod for controversy. Meanwhile, Catherine focused on her impending motherhood. She invited Derek to prenatal appointments, and he came. Their interactions remained cautious, but as they witnessed the ultrasound images and heard the baby's heartbeat, a profound sense of shared responsibility bound them. Then one crisp autumn morning, Catherine went into labor. Derek rushed her to the hospital, eyes wild with worry. Hours later, they welcomed a baby boy, whom they named Andrew Alexander Harrington. Andrew for Derek's late grandfather and Alexander for Catherine's father. Holding their newborn son, Catherine and Derek felt something shift. The swirling chaos of the past months faded, replaced by a fragile hope. They had survived betrayal scandal and near financial ruin, but life had given them this new beginning, a chance to change. Epilogue. Short conclusion. Within the novel. Over the next year, the SEC investigation wrapped up. Derek settled the negligence charge with a hefty fine and strict compliance measures. Harrington Ventures, though, rebounded under new leadership, and Derek devoted himself to philanthropic initiatives while quietly rebuilding trust among colleagues and loved ones. Sabrina Chen never resurfaced in the US, rumored to be hiding out in Hong Kong under her father's protection, though whispers of further legal action haunted her. For Catherine and Derek, the road to healing was long and winding. They attended counseling, learned to communicate more honestly, and above all focused on raising little Andrew in an environment of love and stability. Through tearful confessions and late-night heart-to-hearts, Catherine began to forgive, and Derek sought to become the man she deserved. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, life rarely is. But in the hush of their child's laughter and the quiet strength of renewed commitment, they found the seeds of something real, something worth preserving. And though the headlines had screamed betrayal and scandal, the final pages of their story were yet unwritten, carrying the possibility of redemption and a new kind of happiness. Life can twist and turn in the most unexpected ways. For Derek and Catherine Harrington, what began as a shocking betrayal escalated into a high-stakes legal drama threatening to tear their lives apart. Yet amidst scandal and heartbreak, they discovered a glimmer of resilience and a reminder that even when everything seems lost, hope can emerge from the shadows. In this story, we've witnessed secrets laid bare, ambitions tested, and a love that struggled to survive the storm. Ultimately, it is a testament to the power of truth and the choices we make in the wake of our deepest regrets. If you found yourself enthralled by the twists and turns of Derek and Catherine's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more captivating tales of ambition, betrayal, and redemption. Your support allows us to continue bringing such stories to life, and we can't wait to share the next chapter with you.